Hey, soulmates. It is Tuesday, December 20th, and we have gathered some stories for you that we want you to know about it here on Fox Soul's Black Report. I'm Courtney Hicks.
And I'm Nicordelai Corte. We're honored to stand behind this desk each day to take you on a journey across Black America and the stories that impact our people.
That's right. We're going to bring you our news, our views, and our voice. So let's get in today's top headlines. A grand jury in Georgia has indicted a now retired Atlanta police officer for the fatal shooting of 21-year-old Jimmy Atchison during a federal raid of a Northwest Atlanta apartment. Atchison was killed on January 22nd, 2019, after an FBI task force that included him tried to arrest him for an armed robbery warrant. Police said he stole a woman's purse and cell phone. The claim was disputed later by a witness. Ex-officer Sung Kim now faces involuntary manslaughter, violation of oath of office, and murder charges.
In its final public meeting, the House Select Committee investigating the January 6th attack on the Capitol referred former President Donald Trump to the Department of Justice for potential criminal prosecution. Concluding an 18-month-long investigation, the bipartisan committee is urging the Department of Justice to charge Mr. Trump related to his attempt to overturn the 2020 election and his actions leading up to and during the January 6th riot. The panel is accusing him of obstruction of an official proceeding, conspiracy to defraud the United States, conspiracy to make a false statement, incite, assist, or aid or comfort an insurrection. This marks the first time in history Congress has referred a former president for criminal prosecution.
And to Los Angeles now, where first-degree murder conviction of rapper Nipsey Hussle's killer will stand. A judge rejected a defense motion to have the status reduced. The judge also denied requests for a new trial. Eric Holder, who you see here, was convicted in July of fatally shooting Hussle in front of his South LA clothing store. That was back in 2019. Holder could spend the rest of his life behind bars. Sentencing is set for February.
A Florida family is seeking justice and looking for answers after a mother dies on the surgery table. On October 20th, 2021, 26-year-old Janisha Jila Williams and her mother, Latasha Leggett, traveled to Best You Now Cosmetic Surgery Center in Plantation, Florida, so the young woman could receive a breast augmentation and a Brazilian butt lift. A report from the Broward Medical Examiner's Office noted that the procedure was completed, but Williams never woke up from the anesthesia. Her cause of death was listed as undetermined. Since the tragedy, the Florida Health Department has filed administrative complaints against the facility, as well as Dr. John Edward Nees, the designated physician for Best You Now. The 26-year-old left behind two young children, ages 5 and 2.
Okay. Remember Pastor Lamore Whitehead, the blinged out bishop who was robbed while preaching during a service live? You remember that? He's now been arrested for fraud and extortion. Whitehead is accused of swindling $90,000 in retirement savings from one of his parishioners to buy himself luxury items. The indictment also accuses him of extorting thousands of dollars from a businessman. One court document says if convicted, now these are federal charges, Whitehead faces a minimum of 20 years in prison. His attorney, of course, denies all of the allegations. And he kind of put himself in the spotlight, preaching. I don't know if it was a Sunday. It appeared to be a Sunday, preaching live online, blinging and testifying and preaching. And somebody came in there and gave him and the congregation some business. And because of that viral moment, he is now finding himself in the hot seat. But when it went viral, I remember a lot of folks from that area online kind of talking about what the streets were saying about some of his practices. And now it appears as though it's caught up with him. And like I mentioned, these are federal charges. So this is pretty heavy. You know, when the feds come after you, they got something on you.
And speaking of the feds coming after you, what do you think about the January 6th committee? I mean, this is a big moment. This has never happened before. We've never had a former president, having charges recommended that the Department of Justice go after a former president. Yeah. This is a very big deal. What do you think the streets are going to say about this?
Well, personally, when I heard about it, Trump has been able to get away with so much as far as that whole run for those 4 years. I think because now his validity and his importance and his power is being questioned, maybe his whole movement and this whole Trump thing is a little vulnerable right now. So he might end up actually now having to answer to these calls and to these charges and to these accusations, where before he was just so slick with it that he was able to avoid a lot of what was coming down. So I think now he's at a very vulnerable point, and we might see something really happen if, in fact, he is guilty of what they're charging him with. I
mean, very major, a bipartisan group of members of Congress on the January 6th committee making this recommendation. A committee led by Representative Benny Thompson of Mississippi, a black man who knows a lot about dealing with these sorts of issues from his experience on the ground in Mississippi.
Yeah. I don't think there's any more fear anymore. Let's not fool ourselves. It was a very powerful persona.
Yeah.
And I just think it's a wrap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, sad news to deliver, soulmates. One of the first black students to attend Pace Academy has died. Judge Clyde Reese died this week. Court officials saying he died unexpectedly after a short hospital stay. A former commissioner of the Department of Community Health, Reese was appointed to the 15-judge court in 2016 by Governor Nathan Deal, winning election to a 6-year term in 2019. Now, Reese and 2 cousins were among the first black students to attend Pace Academy, an Atlanta private school, in 1969. The 3 became the first black students to graduate from the school in 1976. Reese, a Lithia Springs resident, had 5 children and 3 grandchildren. No cause of death was given.
All right, black excellence at its best. Not too late to check on your friends and your family as a 6.4 magnitude earthquake struck Northern California early this morning. And this is where Nick Cordelai is from. The U.S. Geological Survey says the earthquake's epicenter was about 7 point, and it was centered just off the coast in the Pacific Ocean, 5 miles off the coast of Humboldt County, where as many as 70,000 customers lost power. More than a dozen smaller quakes as powerful as a 4.6 magnitude struck the area afterward.
Meanwhile, snow is expected to fall all across several southern states, making it a dangerous winter wonderland for so many. For our soulmates in Houston and the surrounding areas, Fox's Chelsea Edwards has some tips to keep in mind to brace the cold conditions.
Houston Mayor Sylvester Turner is urging people to get ready as we are expecting temperatures to drop into the teens later this week. Houstonians have been out buying cases of water and generators in case of a power outage. Losing power remains a top concern for people across the state. The temps caused pipes to freeze and then burst back in the freeze of 2021. With that in mind, store shelves have been clearing out of covers for plants and pipes. Of course, you'll want to remember to wrap your pipes. Outdoor faucets need to bundle up too. If you can't get those hose bib covers or other protection, old t-shirts will work as well. Remember to drain your outdoor faucets if you are leaving town, and drip your faucets indoors. You can open cabinets to let that warm air get to those pipes. Also remember to detach your garden hoses and turn off any sprinkler systems, and also know where your main water shutoff valve is ahead of time in case a pipe does burst. Abacus Plumbing offered another tip in case you plan to be out of town for the holiday.
I would try to make sure you have somebody who can check in on it for you, making sure that nothing burst anyway, even with your precautions.
Don't forget your plants and pets. Bring all potted plants inside. You can insulate outside trees and plants with mulch. Bring your pets inside and place them inside of a garage to stay warm if you have to. You can also insulate any outdoor pet shelters using straw bedding. And remember, under the Safe Outdoor Dogs Act that became law last January, dogs have to have access to adequate shelter and drinkable water in all weather conditions.
Experts also suggest that you find the nearest warming centers in case you experience loss of power. This whole package really is
excellent.
An education for me as somebody who's new to Michigan. I thought I knew cold living in Washington, D.C.
It's been pretty mild.
Right? You say it's mild?
It's been pretty mild here in Michigan, 29, 30, it's pretty mild.
I have on my gloves, my earmuffs, my fuzzy hat, right? And I thought that the airport had heated runways. Somebody told me this. Apparently, it is a myth.
No.
There are no heated runways in Detroit.
We're gonna help you survive, but it's actually been quite mild, which is actually a good thing. And that package was excellent. Chelsea, can I just say yes, hair, to that reporter there? But she was absolutely correct. You want to keep a slow drip as temperatures are going to drop to the single digits, especially for those in the southeast that are not accustomed to those type of temperatures. You want to keep a little bit of a steady drip. It keeps your pipes from freezing. You might want to keep your heat on a steady temp when you leave out, maybe about 65. Is what we do, sometimes 68, depending on
how deep
how deep the temperatures drop. So many things that you have to think about. Wow. Let's think about our automobiles. They might need to warm up just a little bit. They need some help too. So many things you have to keep mindful of, especially if this weather is not what you're accustomed to. But for the South, I'm just going to pray on it. My husband just had to leave for a flight to head to Alabama. It's supposed to get down to 18 degrees. They don't know anything about that. So let's just stay safe, and those safety measures are going to be so important as everybody is going to experience a deep freeze and some snow for Christmas.
Yeah, and speaking of safety measures, I just want to report that my family is safe and sound, and a lot of folks in the Bay Area are safe and sound after the earthquake this morning, a 6.4 earthquake off the coast of Northern California this morning. I texted with mom and auntie and cousins.
That was like 4 in the morning, right?
And a lot of them couldn't even feel it.
They didn't feel it. They sleep that hard? Let an earthquake. I remember I was in D.C. and that earthquake hit, and I was at work doing radio at the time, and the console shook. I was like, and good night, everyone. I'm out of this. We were in a high rise. I was like, it's a wrap. That's good to hear that everybody's okay.
Very good to hear. Very good to hear. Now on to Wells Fargo, who's agreed to pay $3.7 billion for mismanaging consumer loans for more than 16 million customers. The U.S. Consumer Financial Protection Bureau ordered the San Francisco-based company to repay $2 billion to consumers and $1.7 billion in penalties. The Bureau says that Wells Fargo harmed consumers by charging illegal fees and interest on auto loans and mortgages, incorrectly applying overdraft fees, and wrongfully repossessing vehicles, not to mention improperly denying mortgage loan applications. It's also accused of incorrectly applying overdraft fees on banking and savings accounts. As many as 16 million customers were affected.
Wow. Well, okay, Wells Fargo folks can make good and help out campaigns like this, as there is a new campaign being led by community leaders, all to help single moms during the holiday season. The Rent for Moms campaign is geared towards helping more than 50 Black single mothers pay rent across the U.S. Organizers say they wanted to help out after learning about the recent Gender Equity Policy Institute, who published a report showing that 33% of Black women are severely rent burdened, and that 1/3 of elderly Black and Latino women living alone have income below the federal poverty line. Now, the goal is set to raise at least $100,000 by Christmas. As of this past Monday, they've raised more than $47,000. If you would like to donate, visit givebutter.com/rentformoms.
Now, Courtney, I've got to wonder how many Black women, how many elderly folks, how many low-income folks that may benefit from this Rent for Moms fund might have been negatively impacted by the actions of Wells Fargo. That is a pretty significant finding by the Consumer Protection Bureau against Wells Fargo. We've reported on Wells Fargo being in the news fairly often for consumer fraud related issues. We know Wells Fargo to be awfully philanthropic in the community, but to be philanthropic, but to still get smacked with these, consumer fraud, consumer protection issues, I think one doesn't wash away the other.
Well, what is done in the dark will eventually come out in the light, and I don't know if those efforts were to kind of mask the underbelly, the dirty that obviously has been happening, and I wouldn't be surprised as this story continues to break open if we do, finally see some statistics as to how their unfair practices or unlawful practices have affected Black folks in particular. I wouldn't be surprised. We're always the one at the short end of the stick when it comes to, banking practices, mortgage and lending. We've been talking about this plentiful here on the show. So I'm interested to see how it has affected our particular people in particular. Right?
Yeah, mm-hmm. And good work to the folks at the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Mm-hmm. That's why we need it.
Still ahead, a plan to combat teen violence in Philadelphia.
That's right. We're going to tell you what school officials are doing to make the classroom a safer place for all students. You're watching Fox Soul's Black Report. We'll be back in a minute.